Good evening, everyone. I'd like to bring together this regular meeting of the King George County Board of Supervisors. We'll start off this evening with an invocation by Mr. Granger, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance with Mr. Miller. If everyone would please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Thank you, everyone. Mr. Miller, any agenda or amendments to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we will now open the floor up for public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at the time of the public hearing. If anyone does come up, you would please state your name and address before you start. So anyone up for public comment?
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chairman. My name is Renee Parker at 7144 Peppermill Road. I'm here as the acting president of the King George Historical Society, just to give you a tiny update on our improvements and reorganization, and just a notification that our society has delivered by email a proposed memorandum of understanding. I know county attorney's been out, but just wanted to make sure that one of the requirements did stipulate identification of spaces that the Historical Society would like to see for their use in the courthouse in the renovation. I just want to say that knowing that MOUs typically have some iterations built in just by virtue of the nature of negotiation, that our desire is to have the museum open as soon as possible. I have probably a quarter of the museum in the back of my car because we hope to see you all at the Fall Festival and have our ornaments and pottery and things like that for sale. So if the space part of the requirement is going to result in a length of time of discussion, we'd ask that you feel free to put that off and focus on the rest of the memorandum of understanding, which are immediate types of cares and guidance and who's going to be doing what for the future. But I just want to thank you all for the cooperation and the guidance that we received to create the MOU. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Ms. Lavelle.
Hi, my name is Ana Maria Lobo. I live in Presidential Lakes, 10263 Roosevelt. I want to ask the supervisors tonight if you ever meet the people that you represent. I know you represent each of your own districts, like Mrs. Kathy Bender represents Shiloh, but Mrs. Bender is very much involved in the county, and people know who she is. Mrs. Annie Kapka is very involved in the community and sometimes invites people to talk to her if they have any concerns. I don't know about the rest of the board, but the Fall Festival will be a good time for all the supervisors to meet with the people who live in King George, and after all, are the people they represent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lavelle. Mr. Bushrod.
Good evening. My name is Wayne Bushrod, 10144 Deer Lane. I just wanted to publicly thank the board for their involvement, their encouragement, and everything that they did to get the Confederate statue moved from in front of the courthouse. Me and the branch of NAACP think that it is in a much more appropriate place where it can be visited by visitors from everywhere. By it being gone, people of color and other nationalities can now enter the courthouse via the front door if that was open without being intimidated by the way things used to be. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bushrod. Anyone else for public comment? Ms. Jordan.
Good evening. My name is Claudette Jordan, 11773 Big Bear Lane, Lusby, Maryland. As president of the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association, again, I want to thank all of you for all the efforts that are going into the Ralph Bunche project. And with all the latest news and the progress that we're making, memberships picked up. So I thank you for that. I go to the mailbox and there are new members and commitments, and even people who are honorary lifetime members are now rolling over and becoming paid members, which is great. It gives us more resources to have skin in the game as we go forward with this project. And also, I still talk about the enthusiasm of the Ralph Bunche Advisory Committee. Everyone is still enthusiastic and doing their jobs, and we're having meetings and formulating and everything. And it's a joy, and I thank each and every one of you for that. Mr. Stonehill, I saw you look at my foot. Yes, I fell, I injured my foot, I tore ligaments, but in spite of pain and clip-clop, I'm here to testify about the good job that the board's doing, so good job.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan, and speedy recovery. Anyone else for general public comment? Mr. Dines? Mr. Hunsinger, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's been a while. Mr. Chair, members of the board, my name is Brent Hunsinger. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. First, I would like to congratulate the county on receiving an award of $30,300 from the Community Flood Preparedness Fund for the creation of a resilience plan for the county. This plan, once certified and created by you all and certified by DCR, will help the county to apply for millions more in funding from the Community Flood Preparedness Fund for actual on-the-ground projects to help the county deal with the effects of many types of flooding, of which we've seen in the last few days as well in many areas. I'm also here to speak on the text amendment mentioned in the agenda for green energy ventures. The language of this text amendment that will be discussed this evening on the agenda, but has not been made available to the public. According to the public comment at the August 16th Board of Supervisor meeting, this has to do with the potential rezoning of 352.5 acres from agricultural to industrial. This would be in pursuit of the development of a hydrogen plant, data center campus, and other water-intensive uses that would draw water from the Rappahannock River. For the record, Friends of the Rappahannock is not against the use of water from the Rappahannock River, but we prefer anything that is done to be done in a transparent, open manner, and in kind of in an organized process. So I'd ask for this process to be open and transparent and to provide the public with an ample opportunity to participate. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hunsinger. Anyone else for general comment? Ms. Fairfax, welcome again.
Hello. Debbie Fairfax, 623 Kings Highway. So would you finish your basement if you knew you had a serious unrepaired crack in the foundation and leaking pipes overhead? No, you'd fix the structure and the vital components of your house first. Then you would consider a potential project. A corporation has proposed a text amendment. The corporation has also revealed the intended project associated. This request is not as simple as adding one line for a known quantity to our existing ordinances. We would need a definition for power plant, not too broad and not so narrow that only one corporation could come to the table. We would also need a set of robust, up-to-date regulations specific to power plants and data centers that protected the county and the residents nearby before the applicant finished submitting a request for rezoning. Without the proposed text amendment, you make it so the overhauled, more up-to-date regs set the standard. The proposals for the new industry should meet the Planning Commission endorsed, public vetted, board approved ordinances that we are paying the Berkeley Group to help us to develop. The Planning Commission is a skilled set of volunteers who are nobly engaged hip deep in this process. We have current zoning regs that are badly in need of this overhaul. This process is due to be complete in 2023 after public hearings. Let's stay the course and not rush throwing power plants into the regs so a rezoning can be considered before we even understand what the ordinances should be to be in place. Localities and whole nations have placed moratoriums on specific industries until they can get their regulations in place. Not only should we not yet consider placing power plants in the regs, we should tonight seriously discuss pulling battery storage units, data centers, and solar farms out of by right and placing them too into special exception, if anything. I've come to understand the absolutely incredible situation in King George. We have acres of flat land next to a river with 2 water hookups, near high voltage power lines, surplus methane, and a way to sell excess power. They've invested a lot of time and money into exploring this option. They're not going anywhere. We're going to be courted. We can set the standards for our courtship. We owe this to the residents, especially those who live nearby, to set proper standards. We can engage with industry wisely and leave a legacy that we're all proud of. I propose active waiting. Let's use this time to consider how to tax these industrial pursuits and fully investigate the actual potential revenue from them. Let's evaluate our needs and understand exactly what benefits we would receive and how much encumbrance we would be willing to take on. Stay the course we are on. It will put us in a perfect position. Please table this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fairfax. Anyone else? Welcome, Mr. Fairfax.
I'm Todd Fairfax. I live at 623 Kings Highway. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'd like to comment on the matter of by right uses versus special exception uses. As we're in the process of overhauling the ordinances, this is a timely subject to make sure we all clearly understand. I've spoken to both Ms. Hall and Mr. Pancati in the Community Development Office to clarify my understanding on the distinction and the implications to this board and the public for each. By right implies that once any applicant meets all the application requirements as assessed by the Community Development Office, the applicant can proceed without review by the Planning Commission or this board and without associated public hearings. The only way an application would come before this board would be if the applicant asked for less than the community design standards, which in these new industrial uses is doubtful since the current ordinances are not very robust. The absence of public hearings is especially problematic. Since each of you are elected to represent the public, how can you do that with excellence without a public hearing to hear from the public? On the other hand, special exception implies that all of the details for the use and its construction would be reviewed by the Planning Commission and by this board, including properly announced public hearings, so you can hear from the public before making a decision that will impact the public. The public hearing can provide many perspectives and advisors, and there is safety in having many advisors. I respectfully and urgently ask that each of you reach out individually to Ms. Hall to refresh in each of your minds these facts and the nuances that she is better able and experienced to address. I've spoken to Ms. Hall and informed her that I would be making this request of you tonight, and she is eagerly awaiting the opportunity to speak to each of you to make sure we are all on the same page in our understanding going forward. The distinction between by right and special exception is vitally important when we consider the current industrial zone uses of solar power generating facilities, battery storage facilities, and data centers, as well as the request for text amendment for a proposed hydrogen power plant by Green Energy Ventures. By the way, power plant is way too broad of a term. It needs to be defined clearly in the ordinances. 3 uses that are in the current ordinances by right in the industrial zoning that I've mentioned. We don't know what we don't know about these uses since they are so new. In fact, Chairman Stonehill remarked at an earlier meeting that it would be better to get it right in the beginning rather than go back and correct mistakes afterward. We don't want to find out after the fact when it's much harder to correct the decisions made by this board to continue the aforementioned uses by right in industrial zones have in any way led to harm our kids or to our families living on adjacent or nearby properties. Please note I'm not suggesting a ban on these uses. Moving all of these current and proposed uses to special exception gives the county more leverage. We need to keep the county's negotiating power and ability to be site-specific in its expectations. Also, this approach maintains the public's ability to truly weigh in on specific proposals. We don't want to face a situation that locks the county into something. It's much better if we choose to allow any of these untried uses by special exception. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fairfax. Anyone else for general public comment? All right, seeing none. Mr. Dines, anyone online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Board, have anybody got any emails or anything to read in? Nope. Okay, seeing no more. I'll close up public comment and we will move to reports of members of the board. Mrs. Mender.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and speaking. And Ms. Jordan, I know how you feel and speedy recovery. First, I would like to talk about Ms. Kupka and I attended the GWRC meeting, and I just want to make my colleagues aware of what's brewing at GWRC. One of it is there is talk of a regional housing advisory committee. They went through an overview for us, and they'll be talking about it at the next meeting if we want to set up a committee or not. This is coming from the Mary Washington Healthcare Community Assessment. And more details, if you want more details, I can send it to you, or you can go on the GWRC website and check out the packet from our last meeting. And also with GWRC, we were discussing the annual dues structure. So just to be aware, there is a push to do 3 different, the per capita dues, a fund balance contribution, and legislative services. I think that's the last one. And just to make you aware, we have, that's the talk right now. So if you want any information, look at the packet or just come talk to me or Ms. Kupka and we can fill you in. And the last but not least, I attended my last HB 206 meeting. For those that don't know what that is I was asked to serve on a state regulatory commission. It was coming up with the regulations for small solar. We had our last meeting and the final report is being drawn, and I will share that with my colleagues and our county attorney, Mr. Miller and Ms. Heather Hall in community development, and they can share that with the planning commission. And that's supposed to come to us on October 17th. And then it will be out for public comment. So anybody in the public can go on Virginia Regulatory Town Hall and find the information of how you can comment on the HB 206. It'll be open for 30 days, and it is supposed to be finalized and sent to the legislature for the next legislative session on December 1st. The big thing that came out of the meeting, and I think I made it aware during the discussion, one of the biggest things I promoted there for our locale, I was on the committee with localities, was having a resource guide, and a resource guide to help decision makers and the public better understand the topics. And I was surprised that was kind of, there was some bristling of not wanting that because they only wanted experts to make a resource guide. And I had a discussion with somebody that was a lobbyist, and one of the big things they asked, well, why have we never heard of these problems about localities before? And I said, because you never asked us at the table before. So now I'm telling you what the problems are. And they didn't have a comment for that. But I want to thank those that were in my work group, because we had some from solar industry and other industries in renewables, and we all came to understand, we understood a little on their side, and they understood our side as a locality. And it was a great experience, and I'm going to be doing a couple of recommendations to send to the board and to send to the planning commission of things we need to put in our ordinance. specifically with the historical assets and partnering with the Historical Society to be experts to kind of give us some info to put in our comp plan, and other things that specifically go to the comp plan and maps and things we need to incorporate so that we're ahead of the curve and not behind the curve. And that is the end of my report. I hope to see you all at the Fall Festival. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bender. Mr. Granger.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. First, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who came out to speak. Ms. Parker, thank you for information about the King George Historical Society, and as well as providing a proposed MOU and in regards to the priorities of what you're looking to see. So I appreciate that. It helps to understand. Ms. Lavelle, you had asked about meeting with people. Yes, I'll be honest, I generally wait for people to reach out to me. I can tell you I met with the Fairfaxes. They reached out to me and they said they want to discuss. It was before the rezoning request was tabled. They want to meet with me to discuss that. So yeah, I will take time out if someone in particular wants to meet and discuss something. I will do that, sure. But I do usually wait for someone to reach out to me. But I will be at the Fall Festival. My plan is to be there. So if anyone wants to reach out to me at that, they're also welcome to speak with me, and I'd be more than happy to. Ms. Jordan, thank you for sharing the information about the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association and the Ralph Bunche Advisory Committee. And I as well, I hope you have a speedy recovery. I'm sorry that you're injured, and I'll be praying for you. Mr. Bushrod, I appreciate your comments about the movement of the memorial from the courthouse lawn to History Land. And so thank you for those, sir. Mr. Hunsinger, I apologize if I misspoke your name. Thank you for the comments about the grant with the resiliency plan, and in regards to the text amendments, kind of go into the Fairfaxes as well. I'd ask this to be added as an opportunity to discuss it with the board, because as you have said, they've put forth a proposal which can't be done because right now it's not even allowed. So I imagine this evening we will discuss that and make a decision to either A, send it to the Planning Commission and say, you need to develop something for us. B, say, hey, we would like you to consider this as part of the whole rezoning overhaul that we're working on, and just see if that makes sense to include into that. Or C, say, we're just not interested in this at all, and then they would know, though. So I look at this more as a courtesy for them to kind of understand, should they be waiting, or is this something that is not really even something they should be entertaining? And they could say, hey, if King George isn't interested in this kind of a opportunity, then they would know that they should just go ahead and remove it and they can move on. But it's more from that perspective. And if it were to go to the Planning Commission, it would go through, because you spoke to public involvement. So yes, it would go through, the Planning Commission would develop it. They'd have a public hearing. People would get to vote on it or to speak on it. They would vote on whether to forward with a recommendation of approval or denial, and then the board would have a public hearing. So it would follow that process if we were to move on that one. I do think the Fairfaxes bring up a lot of good points. Hydrogen energy is something we have never considered before. And so I think there's a lot of things to look into that. And I'm a little bit concerned about trying to move forward with asking the Planning Commission to entertain that while they're working on this whole overhaul. But I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I apologize. So we'll speak about that later tonight as well. So, but everyone, thank you for your comments. The only thing I have to share other than that is yesterday, October 3rd, we had our Commercial Executive Meeting. So we have a plan to have the next regular Commercial meeting on November 16th at UMW Dahlgren campus. So obviously it's going to be locally hosted here at King George. And so I know my colleagues, you guys are always welcome to go to any of those, but this is the one that's local. So it's a little more available and easy probably to attend, even though I'm the official representative of the Commercial. So everyone's always welcome to go November 16th at UMW Dahlgren campus. So that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Ms. Kupka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start by thanking everyone who is here in person joining us this evening or watching online, specifically with regard to those who provided public comment. Mrs. Parker, thank you for your efforts to steer the ship, right the ship at the Historical Society. We greatly appreciate that and looking forward to trying to move forward with an MOU for that organization. Ms. Lavelle, I will, as I did last year, I will again this year have a county information table at Fall Festival in the building in front of the gym, I believe. I would invite any of my colleagues who wishes to join me, as long as there are not 3 of us there conducting county business, because that would constitute a meeting, but any one of you is welcome to hang out with me for a while and answer citizen questions. Mr. Bushrod, thank you for your comment and coming out this evening. Ms. Jordan, glad to hear that your membership is picking up. Mr. Hunsinger, thank you for congratulating us on that Community Flood Preparedness Fund grant. I know it especially is important, particularly to Mr. Stonehill and I, all of us, but he has a district that has been really targeted by the state for flooding. So we're hoping to address some of the issues going on in his district in particular once we can get a plan. And with regard to the text amendment issue, we'll, as Mr. Granger stated, we'll have that conversation later, the discussion later this evening. And Mr. and Mrs. Fairfax also with similar concerns. And I just want to point out to you, as you stated when we spoke before the meeting, we did encourage you at the last meeting to attend the Planning Commission Ordinance Overhaul Work Session, and you did attend, and you each provided public comment regarding your concerns on the data center issue. And next week's regular scheduled Planning Commission meeting on October 11th, the agenda was posted today, and there is a robust data center discussion on the agenda, and I invite the public to view the board packet. So please know you were heard. Public comment matters. Your officials and those we appoint take into consideration what you all say to us when you come out. So thank you again to everyone who came out and shared their concerns this evening. With regard to my report, Friday, September 23rd, I attended the homecoming football game at King George High School. Unfortunately, some youth spectators from the visiting team let their frustrations play out with their team while they were being escorted by our sheriff's deputies to their bus. I want to thank King George Sheriff's Office and King George High School administration for swiftly reacting to the situation in the parking lot and resolving the incident. I will say October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Our local domestic violence shelter Empower House experienced a lightning strike that resulted in a devastating fire, wiping out most of their supplies. Area law enforcement agencies are conducting supply drives. You can visit their website at empowerhouseva.org for a list of sought-after items, which can be dropped off at King George Sheriff's Office until October 15th, and the sheriff has offered to get them to the shelter for us. And Empower House will host its annual vigil for victims of domestic violence on Tuesday, October 25th from 4 to 6 p.m. at 718 venue in Fredericksburg, where we will honor the survivors of domestic violence from our community. The Department of Social Services is again hosting a Thanksgiving and Christmas program to help those in need in our community. Contact DSS if you would like to help. I want to express appreciation to landfill staff for observing and reporting possible suspicious activity at the facility last week. An individual was observed dumping a significant number of one candidate's political signs. Staff contacted King George County's registrar's office, and a representative of the appropriate party was notified to file an incident report with the King George County Sheriff's Office. Law enforcement was able to contact the individual in question and determined it to have been an honest misunderstanding, as the individual was in fact discarding signs after supporting the candidate's primary election campaign and did not think to contact the candidate to return them for possible future use. Thanks to everyone for working to keep our election process here in King George County secure, and don't forget to vote early now or on Election Day, Tuesday, November 8th. And I want to make the board aware that last week, Treasury released local assistance and tribal consistency fund payments to localities last week. Because we host a federal installation in our community, we qualify for 2 additional ARPA payments of $50,000 each, so that's another $100,000 in ARPA funding that can be used for any government purpose other than lobbying activities. And localities must apply online by January 31st, 2023. So if there's consensus of the board, I would like to direct staff to make sure to enter the portal to apply for that funding and add it to the to-do list as well. Is that agreeable to my colleagues? Yes? All right. And lastly, energy was a hot topic this evening during public comment. I want to make the public aware, if you are not, that yesterday Governor Youngkin's office published the 2022 Virginia Energy Plan. I think it would be wise for us to look to the future and have zoning in place to allow for some of the initiatives recommended in the plan. That is all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Kupka. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening and welcome, everyone. It's good to see everyone here. Some new faces, some old faces. Mr. Lynch, haven't seen you in a long, long time. It's good to see you back at it. Ms. Lavelle, I've known you for over 30 years, and I've been going to the Fall Festival for over 30 years. And this will be the only Fall Festival I have ever missed in 30 years. Unfortunately, I have an engagement that I can't change. So if you'd like to chat with me anytime, I'm always available. I don't even have a job, so you can, Monday through Friday is great. Saturdays and Sundays is okay. Mr. Bushrod, it's good to see you. I'm glad that matter got resolved. Most of that occurred before I was on this board, but it ended when I was on the board. Ms. Jordan, I'm excited that things are going well. Ralph Bunch, I've been following and paying attention to, and we'll be speaking about later on, Mr. Bushrod's involvement, and it's very exciting for the community. Mr. Huntsinger, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you a couple weeks ago, or a week, I don't know how long ago it was. One of the things that I picked up on your comment, other than your all comments, was the transparency. You're absolutely correct. I don't think there's transparency in government. I think there's be more transparency. I think the public needs to be fully vested in any projects. I'm not a fan of blanket rezonings. I don't think that, especially in an industrial type setting. Ms. Fairfax, Mr. Fairfax, we'll be discussing the text amendment on the power plants. Thanks for having the opportunity to discuss these matters with you a week or two ago. You know, you spoke of public vetted. That is its most important thing, is public vetted. We all need to be on board in this county of what we're going to see the future like. Do we need the tax revenue for these big operations? Yes. But Mr. Stonehill, you quoted him as saying that, you know, once it happened, you can't go back. And that's a fact. The zoning regulations do need to be defined. I'm in full agreement with that. And I am more inclined to special exemptions than any kind of blanket rezoning. I don't want this to be taken out of control. As far as the Ms. Kupka's comment on the political signs that were put at the dump and honest misunderstanding, I'm not so sure about that. I will tell you, though, that if they're not yours, leave them alone. So that goes with anything in life. If it's not yours, leave it alone. And thank you for everyone for coming. And that's the end of my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Just wanted to say thank you for everybody that came out tonight. It's great to see a nice crowd out here in front of us. We certainly appreciate everybody's involvement. Ms. Parker, thanks for the update on the Historical Society. I know that everybody's really keen on getting that cleaned up, getting that back open, and getting King George's history out for everybody. Ms. Lavelle, thank you very much for coming out like usual. Like the rest of my colleagues said, I am available pretty much anytime for anybody to contact me. And Mr. Bushrod, thanks for coming out and for your comments. It was a long ride to get the monument moved, and it was, government it might be a surprise to you, but government doesn't really move quickly. So, but we got it moved. It's in a great spot. Now everybody can go see it. So thanks for coming out, and thanks for y'all's work as well. Ms. Jordan, thanks for coming out. Yep, it seems like we've got a lot of things going on over there, and finally got some movement for the Ralph Bunch project. So that's great news. Mr. Hunsinger, good to see you. Thank you. And thanks for all the help that you provided for, the county and everything for applying for that, for the money to do the study. The Dahlgren area and then Stafford, the Widewater area up there had, gets a lot of flooding. So, and with base. So that's something we definitely need to do as much work on as possible. So I appreciate y'all's help for getting that. And now it's, we'll move on from there. Fairfax's, thanks for coming out again. So we're going to do everything we can to get it correct moving forward. And, we can look at other people's mistakes for other surrounding counties and say, let's not follow in their footsteps. And, I'm hoping that everybody will kind of err on the side of caution and get everything straight. And, as Mr. Collins said, the county certainly needs some of these big projects to come here to help shoulder the burden of taxes and the money that, is needed to run the county, and it keeps everybody else's taxes down. But we're going to do it correctly, or at least the best that we can. So thanks for coming out and continue coming out to all the different meetings. And Tuesday, the 27th, myself, Mr. Miller, attended the EOC, which is the Emergency Operations Center meeting. All the directors of all the heads of the county went there. It just so happened it was right before a possible hurricane was coming, but fortunately that was avoided, and spoke about all the things that the EOC has done in the past and what they can do in the future, everybody's roles and how everybody can work together as a team to keep all the citizens in the county working and moving ahead safely. And that's all I have for tonight. So I will now close reports from member of the board and move on to the consent agenda.
Move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Moving on, county officials report. Do we have any constitutional officers? I do not see any.
Sheriff Giles online, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, sorry, Sheriff Giles. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to assure the board that I personally investigated the campaign signs incident, and I spoke to the subject that dropped those signs off at the convenience center, and it was completely an innocent situation that she did not know what to do with those signs and chose to do that. She did not take the signs from anybody's property. She actually had posted those signs on people's property during the primary. And when the primary was over, she took the signs back and had them stored in her garage and was not sure what to do with her. She was advised that the next time, if that ever happens, that she should reach out to the respective party and turn them over to the respective party. And she completely understood that and was very remorseful for the fact that the time was spent in investigating and looking into that. So I just want the board to know that it was completely innocent and there was nothing nefarious about this situation at all. So, and I did personally investigate it. So that'll conclude my report.
Thank you, Sheriff Giles.
Can I ask him a question, please?
Mr. Collins.
So how did this person get in possession of 50 signs?
I didn't ask her that, Supervisor Collins. She stated to me that she was out and was actually in support of the party that she put the signs out for. And they actually verified that they were primary signs. And she has spoken to the respective campaign party, and they are complete agreement that it was a mistake. And there was no signs reported stolen throughout the county as social media had requested them to do. So I have no problem finding that this case was just an innocent case of just not knowing what to do with the signs.
Thank you, Sheriff Charles. All right, moving along. Report from the county attorney, Mrs. Lackey.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. I do have a few items. The first being the Hopyard Farm deed of vacation and plat. Earlier this evening, the Service Authority authorized the signing of a deed of vacation that would just adjust slightly the easement locations of a few water and sewer easements in the section 6 and 7 of Hopyard Farm. Since those easements to be vacated are in right-of-way that's dedicated to the county, I'm requesting that the board accept the vacation of those easements, which can be done by an acknowledgement on a deed of vacation.
So, Mr. Lackey, just to be clear, we just need to do a motion to accept the vacate of the deed.
Right. So if it's the will of the board to accept the vacation and authorize Mr. Miller to sign the deed as such.
I move to accept the Hopyard Farm deed of vacation and plat as presented and direct Mr. Miller to sign.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Lackey.
Great. The second item I have is a proposed letter of intent between the county and the Visualize and Rise Foundation. I mentioned this was as an upcoming item in my last board report. This is simply an understanding that would be reached with regard to mutual efforts to fundraise for the benefit of the rehabilitation of the school and also potentially operating funds once that school is up and running as a community center is the stated purpose in the letter of intent. The letter of intent is just that, it is an intent. It's not binding except for the fact that if folks give donations that are specifically for the building or for the operating of the facility, those funds would have to be earmarked for that purpose. It's my understanding that Mr. Jermon Bushrod has indicated that he's pleased with the letter of intent. And if it's the will of the board, I would ask that the board ratify that letter of intent so that fundraising activities can go on and negotiations can commence to formalize the relationship between the county and Visualize and Rise Foundation.
I move to ratify the letter of intent as presented.
Second.
You have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask the county attorney a follow-up question?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. So I believe we directed both legal instruments for Visualize and Rise Foundation and the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association. So I just wanted to touch base and see where, if now that we have this in place, Madam County Attorney would be poised to move forward with a similar instrument for Ralph Bunche Alumni Association?
Yes, I can work on the drafting of a similar agreement with the Alumni Association.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And the last item I have tonight is just an information item. I received a notice from Aqua Virginia of a proposed rate increase. Aqua Virginia does have a customer base in King George. My understanding is that is located in Presidential Lakes. They are proposing to increase their rates beginning December 13th to cover $8 million in ongoing capital improvements. And the rate increase It's characterized as for a customer, the example given is a customer who uses 4,000 gallons of water a month. They would experience a 3.15% increase for their water usage and a 3.49% increase for wastewater. If there's anyone interested in commenting on those proposed rate increases, there will be a hearing of the Virginia State Corporation Commission on January 25th. And in the agenda materials, there's information about how to go about contacting the commission. You do have to give notice that you plan to give comment prior to January 18th. And that's all I have this evening.
Mr. Chairman, question for the county attorney.
Thank you, Ms. Lackey. Mr. Collins has a question for you.
Ms. Lackey, so I read over the material on the rate increase for Acquire Virginia customers and the way to contact the SCC in regards to that. Is there a way for the board, this board, to comment as a whole or in part in regards to being against the rate increase? Other than
so the board, of course, as a body, could designate someone if they wish to speak to that at the hearing in January. We would just have to give notice to the SEC that there was going to be a designated speaker before January 18th.
Is this board interested in being for or against this rate increase for these customers? So I guess silence is a no in my world. So let it be known that I am not for this rate increase for these customers. And I will contact them. I will contact them again, and I'll probably be at the hearing if all possible. And I would request some support from our members.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Any questions from Mrs. Lackey or anything? All right. Thank you, Mrs. Lackey. Moving on to our public hearing for this evening. The King George County Board of Supervisors will now hold a public hearing that has been properly advertised to receive public input regarding amendments to the transient occupancy tax ordinance based on state law changes. I will first ask for the staff report, then I will open the floor for public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If you do speak, please state your name and address before you comment. Upon completion of public comment, I will bring the matter back to the board for consideration. The board may or may not take action tonight depending on information received during public comment.
I believe Ms. Lackey will provide the staff report.
Okay, Mrs. Lackey?
Yes, so these amendments are all arising out of changes in the state law. There were changes in 2021 as well as further changes for 2022, which technically took effect October 1st. So this is kind of a cleaning up exercise to mirror what the state code now says as to transient occupancy. And the changes chiefly have to do with making sure that taxes are collected by accommodations intermediaries, and accommodations intermediaries in common speak, the types of companies that you might be familiar with are like Airbnb, Vrbo, things of that nature. So those types of entities have been kind of disclaiming the requirement to collect taxes because they are not themselves the room provider. And so this is a cleaning up of the law to make sure that the taxes are collected and that those intermediaries do have some responsibility to make sure that the taxes are paid on the room charges, even though those intermediaries, they themselves only pay sales tax as to whatever upcharges and fees that they charge on the room rates. So it's a little bit of a complicated issue, but transient occupancy taxes are important, and they do help fund the tourism in the county in large part. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them about the amendments.
Thank you, Mrs. Lackey. Any questions for Mrs. Lackey?
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Ms. Lackey, so I understand collecting the taxes and what the state law says in regards to the transient, whatever you call it. But so would you, if you rented a room to someone, would you have to collect the tax?
Yes, so either the accommodations provider or an accommodations intermediary. So if the lodging is booked through one of those organizations I mentioned, like Airbnb or Vrbo or anything like that, one or the other would be responsible for making sure that the local transient occupancy taxes are paid.
So how does, if someone rents a room, how does one report that? Do they have to, and who enforces that? And why would the state get down into that deep?
So it's kind of a double layered thing. The state collects the retail sales tax on the portion from the accommodations intermediary that's for their services of facilitating bookings. But the transient occupancy tax is a local tax, and there is a provision in the amendments that's authorized by the state law that will require monthly reporting by hotels, short-term rentals, and other lodgings. They will have to report their activities to the Commissioner of Revenue on a monthly basis. And that's mainly so that the Commissioner can start matching the taxes that she's received to the reports of actual bookings.
So my original question was, if you rent a room, you have to pay this tax?
Yes, the tax applies to transient occupancy. So that's any time that you're staying under 30 days at a location.
Okay, so it's under 30 days. So it's not if you rent a room to somebody. Okay, I was trying to make that clear. Thank you.
You were just saying, like, if someone's renting a room in a house for a...
Like if I rented a room from you for, I'm sure you'd give me a good deal, like $450 a month, then would you have to pay the tax? And the answer is no. That's what I wanted to know.
Gotcha. Less than 30 days. Okay.
More?
Is that all, Mr. Collins?
That's it.
Anything else for Mrs. Lackey, folks? All right. Thank you, Mrs. Lackey. All right. I will open up the floor for public comment. Does anybody in the public like to speak upon this hearing? Seeing none. Mr. Dines, anyone online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Has anybody received any written statements? Nope. Okay, we will close public comment and move it back to the board.
Move to adopt an ordinance to amend and reordain Chapter 14, Article 7, Transient Occupancy Tax of the King George County Code to reflect the Virginia Code amendments as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Mrs. Lackey. Okay, moving on, presentations and reports. Report from the Rappahannock YMCA. Oh.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Miller. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Barney Riley, and I serve as the CEO for the Rappahannock Area YMCAs, which service the Planning District 16, the wonderful county of King George, Caroline, Spotsylvania, Stafford, and the city of Fredericksburg. It is great to be here tonight, and I want to thank you for all the work that you do. I grew up in Northern Virginia, in the Alexandria area, and been living in King George since 1982. It's great to see Ms. Lovell and Mr. Lynch and others. I worked for this county as a sports director back in 1982 to 84, and it was a wonderful time in my life, and I live in King George now in the Passapatanza area. But I want to thank all of you for the work that you do. At the very best, it's very challenging, and you all do a stellar job, and I appreciate that as a citizen. I also want to publicly thank Supervisor Kupka for her work on the King George Board of Directors for the YMCA. So we're very fortunate to have her and her work and find her presence. Back in 2006, I took over the reins at the YMCA for the first 10 years of my career. I again ran programs, and then the board saw in me a can-do attitude, as I was told. And in 1993, I took over the reins of trying to execute the long-range plan and to expand the services at the Stafford branch and to one day have a presence in every county. And we've been able to execute that, and we've been very blessed. The people of the Planning District 16 have been very receptive to the mission of the YMCA. And it was in 2006, the board in King George who felt that a YMCA would be advantageous in King George County. And they shared our vision of enhancing the quality of life of the citizens and to create a YMCA. And I'm proud to say that I believe that we are achieving that goal, and that the response in King George County has been overwhelming, and that we have approximately 2,000 billing units, which equates to about 8,000 members. And I'm not sure exactly what the population is at this time, but somewhere around 27,000 citizens. And so we have a pretty strong penetration rate of about 25 to 28%. So that is good, but we want to get higher than that. And so, but I am proud of the heritage that we have. We service the disabilities populations in King George County. We have a financial assistance program that makes available our services to every child, every family, every adult that does not possess the capacity to pay. Unlike the for-profit wellness businesses in Planning District 16 that do a great job. I have nothing but good things to say about them. But you will not see busloads of handicapped children being let off every day at the Y, or the other adult populations with disabilities improving their quality of life like they do at the YMCA. The YMCA is all about inclusiveness, where the playing field of life is level for everyone. Everyone's got value, and that's what we strive to do every day. And while we still have a lot of work to do, we are making progress every day. And so I thank all of you for supporting the Y. We plan on continuing our work. We hope to grow. If there's any collaboration we can do together, I'm a firm believer in the old adage, we can do what I can. So we can leverage our strengths and our beliefs and our visions. And so if you have any projects, we would like to share our visions with you, and maybe there is some opportunity in the future. So again, I want to thank you very much for the work that you do, and whatever the YMCA can do in your opinions to improve and to help the people in this county, please let us know. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Hello, Megan.
Hi, how you doing? Good evening. First, I want to thank the board and Mr. Chairman the opportunity to go over our impact for the past 14 years. I have had the pleasure to work for the King George Family YMCA since we opened in 2008. I've firsthand seen the impact that we do out in the community through our programs, membership, and I've also been very fortunate to raise my 4 children at the YMCA. I couldn't imagine them growing up without a YMCA. I was fortunate to grow up in the Massett Family YMCA in South Stafford. So to do this, it's a dream to be able to do this for our next generation. So I'm going to go over some of our impact numbers very briefly. So since 2008, over 500 at-risk youth have had no summer learning loss thanks to the YMCA Power Scholars Program. So this program started back in 2015, and we started with 30 rising third graders that had that were falling below grade level reading. And so this program evolved into the Power Scholars Program because the results that we saw in this program, the school asked us to administer the entire summer school program in 2018 and 2019. And then obviously COVID hit, so that did hinder some of our efforts. But over 500 children so far have gone through that program. And just a couple quick facts. Attendance rate for summer school are typically around 70%. Our programs consistently were 89 to 92% attendance rates. One reason because of this is it was a full day program. The typical summer school ends at lunchtime and then they're gone. This program was from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and they had learning in the morning with King George County teachers, and then in the afternoon our staff came in for enrichment. So we had guest speakers, we had field trips, and this program was a five or 6 week program depending on the year. Next, since 2008, 31 adults have learned to live a healthier lifestyle in our YMCA DPP program. So as you guys know, 1 in 3 Americans have been diagnosed with prediabetes. If they take advantage of a program like this, they have 58% chance of not having diabetes. So this is a program, you know, with COVID, we are trying to expand it. It originated with a partnership with Mary Wash, and in King George, we are starting to grow our numbers in this class. Since 2008, 1,250 children and adults are now safer in the water because they participate in YMCA swim lessons. So we have swim lessons starting at age 6 months all the way through adults. So with King George, you're in between 2 rivers. Learning water safety and how to swim is an essential life skill. And so, you know, over the past 14 years, that many children and adults have gone through our program. Since 2008, over 800 children in need have been provided with clothing and backpacks through our YMCA Bright Beginnings program. Out of all of the programs, I would say this is the most well-known program that the YMCA does in the community. I've seen many volunteers in the room and donors, and each year we have to raise about $15,000 for this program. And what it does, the children are identified through the guidance counselors and social workers in the local elementary schools as children that are in need and don't have the necessary clothes or school supplies to start school. And so what we're doing, we're leveling that playing field for them so they can start prepared and they're not worried about not having the right school supplies to start, not having a nice new outfit for their first week of school. And so with the help of this community, we've raised enough money to provide over 800 children with the necessary school supplies. Since 2008, 475 new lifeguards were certified in our lifeguarding courses. So in order to teach these life-saving skills in our swim lessons, we need lifeguards. And as you know, there has been a shortage of lifeguards throughout the pandemic. And we have been very fortunate to have somewhat a feeder program from our swim lessons to swim team and on to staff. The YMCA in the community, many of you have children, it serves as their first job. And so lifeguarding is one of those, lifeguarding and summer camp are one of those first job opportunities for many high schoolers and teenagers and college students. Since 2008, 1,675 second graders learned life-saving water safety skills in our second grade Learn to Swim program. So this is another program that we partnered with King George County Schools. We had a goal to teach every second grader in the county how to swim. And so we started this program. Each elementary school, the 3 in the county, have 6 weeks of swim lessons. They are bused by county buses to the YMCA on a Friday for 6 weeks, and we split them up in 2 groups. I call it organized chaos because when you have 75 second graders in the pool at one time, Mr. Lynch has been a volunteer several years for this program. it's nothing but organized chaos. But every child comes out of there learning life-saving skills in the water. And so our goal at some point is that we have taught every child in the county from 2nd to 12th grade how to swim or life-saving skills through this program. And so, obviously because of COVID, we had 2 years of, we just restarted it in September. So Potomac currently is there now on Fridays. So if you're ever interested to see from 11:30 to 2 p.m., our pool is closed down. We have about 25 volunteers and the children are bused into 2 groups for this program. So it's awesome to see. It's something you have to come in person to really see it. So I invite anybody that would be interested or that would like to volunteer. We're doing this all the way through the springtime. So next, since 2008, over 1,500 families have received financial assistance for membership programs or childcare. So this is the big thing that sets the YMCA aside from other gyms, is that we don't turn anybody away for the inability to pay. And so this equates to about $1.5 million in assistance that we've given out directly to the community to allow maybe a single mother with 2 children or a senior that's on a fixed income to take advantage of our membership and programs where we discounted up to 70%. Now we do have a few instances where even the 70% off they cannot afford, and we will meet one-on-one with them and make a price that they can afford. And we secure donors to cover some. At Christmas time, somebody will say, I want to sponsor a family for a year, and then we are able to identify a family in our financial assistance. And also, the Y also serves as a community hub for other nonprofit and organizations that can utilize some of our resources that we have. So up here, I'm not going to read them all, but a few I'd like to point out. Gwen Skiff, this is a nonprofit that's in Fredericksburg. They teach CPR and first aid. A little background, their daughter died of a heart-related incident at a track meet, and there was no machine available, to AED available. And so they have committed themselves to teaching CPR and first aid to everybody and provide AEDs to places that do not have them. So we will host events for them to help raise money. We did an event in June that raised $12,000 for their organization. A couple other, Ainsley's Angels, we've held events for them. We serve as a host site for Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Young Life is starting back up in a few weeks with, they're having a pumpkin carving in a week or 2 at our facility. And then also, King George County Schools is a huge partner. King George County Sheriff's Office, Visualize and Rise Foundation. But that's just a few of the things that we do. But again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to go over. We'll be celebrating 15 years next year, which is hard. I feel like I'm aging myself. But it's just amazing what we've been able to do and to put the numbers together. But we wouldn't have been able to do it without the help and support of the county. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Any questions or comments, folks? Ms. Kupka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing them to come and present this evening. It was at my request, since I do serve on your King George board, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve during our current Rappahannock Regional YMCA strategic planning sessions, and I'm looking forward to coming on October 26th when it gets presented to the regional board. Thanks for everything you do for King George County.
Mr. Granger?
I'd just like to say thank you. I appreciate the statistics on the impact you had on our community. I really appreciate it helps to better understand. But thank you for providing those services and meeting the needs of our community. I really appreciate it.
I just want to say thank you for all you do.
Thank you. And I remember when you started the swim program with the 2nd graders, and it's amazing that that many have completed it. That I was all for that when that happened, and I'm glad it's a success, and everything you all do is a success. And thank you. We really appreciate it. We see.
There will be a day when that initial 2nd grade class will be seniors. Every class from that point on will have been taught from the class.
Absolutely.
This is a survival.
Thank you.
Guys, I just wanted to say thanks for coming out. The Y has done so much for the county. And I've been to a lot of Bright Beginnings and Shop with the Sheriffs, and it's just the smiles that it brings onto people's faces, and the kids is just great. For everything you guys do up there is fantastic. I just hear such kudos for everything that goes on up at the Y. And as Mr. Collins said about the swimming, that's great. I know a lot of kids who have been through that program. I do spend a little bit of time near the water, and I run into so many kids that their parents don't swim, but they do, and they learn to go swimming through a program like that. And like you said, that's a basic life skill. And we're located between these two counties and these two rivers, and it's everybody should know how to swim. And that's just fantastic. Plus all the exercise the classes you do. You guys are great. I could go on and on, but I won't. But thank you for the presentation. All right, up next, Jazz in the Country After Action. I'm sorry, my paperwork. What's up, y'all? My paperwork had you guys reversed, so I apologize.
Okay.
So Joan, come right on up and tell us all about it.
Well, good evening, Chairman Stonehill and board members. I am Joan Waters with Jazz in the Country. I am accompanied by fellow board members Randy Pryor and Larry Robinson, and we're excited to report on our third annual Benefit Jazz Fest. We want to start out by giving you a snapshot of what happened on August 27th.
What's up, y'all? It's Kyle on the mic, the host of the third annual Jazz in the Country Fest. We are out here hosting. We have music, vendors, food. We're going to have a great time. The weather's out. You see I'm glistening. The sun is out. We're going to have some fun right here on this beautiful waterfront right here, y'all. Let's vibe out with some good music, some good food. And again, I'm hosting, y'all. Let's go. Come on.
It was a great day. It was a hot day, weather-wise and music-wise. So this is a great video that we'll be using. It's of course posted on our website. We have a YouTube channel so folks can check us out as well. So it'll be a great marketing and promotion tool for next year as well. Thank you. So, getting down to the basics, there were about 294 tickets sold, which is roughly about a handful less than last year. We were grateful for hotel discounts provided by Hampton Inn and Holiday Inn Express. To our knowledge, only a few rooms were used outside of our staff and performers. We're not surprised by that because most attendees are within a 90-minute radius, of King George, so we know most people go home. We do encourage them, however, to get a room, make a weekend, and sort of promote King George so they can see what other recreational opportunities there are right here in King George. Our attendees were mostly from Virginia, and we have listed there the towns that they were represented, as well as Maryland, and a handful from DC, even Indiana, New York, and North Carolina. So the word is getting out. We're all already getting requests for consideration for next year, and those are performers from the East Coast to the West Coast. I'm not sure how they find out about us. It could be our marketing, and we're here to thank the county for supporting those efforts. Oops. So in our marketing, our goal is to promote Mount Bethel, of course, the festival, of course, and King George County. And this year we engaged in digital marketing, and I learned something new, geofencing. Never heard of it. So apparently you can target areas by zip code and ads will pop up on their cell phones. And so that is something new for us this year. Of course, we're all over Facebook, Instagram, and our website. We have ongoing updates. Listed also are other electronic outreach methods that we use. We send our own e-blast. We partnered with a local entertainment company who has a huge following, Brencore Entertainment, and so they also did e-blast. Performers put it on their websites, their Instagram and Facebook accounts as well. We try to cover every inch. So we also include other Facebook groups, community calendars in Southern Maryland, here in Virginia, and also in PG County as well. Northern Neck Tourism blasts our information for us. King George Community Events Facebook page, we also post there. DC Jazz, Virginia.org, and others. So there are three basic ways that we use for marketing as we see. Freelance Star this year had us on the front page the week of the event. Now they have done articles on Mount Bethel and our event every year, but we were really, really excited and surprised to see it was a front page article this year, which actually boosted ticket sales. Recreation News is another print and electronic news service. You may actually see their newspapers in local convenience stores, and their primary readership includes federal workers in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. They're great partners with us. We again had radio spots on WHUR FM radio. They also did a ticket giveaway for us. Praise DC did radio spots in August, and B101.5 also did a ticket deal in August. Now, with something new we did this year were 2 billboards right here in King George. You may have seen them as you were going. They're a couple miles south of the bridge. And of course, roadside banners, signs from Fredericksburg throughout King George, the Dahlgren area, all the way down to Richmond, and even my neck of the woods, which is Southern Maryland. To give you an idea of who we targeted, this shows some of the towns that were included in the marketing campaign with the Freelance Star. So from Waldorf, Maryland to Stafford, Virginia, up to DC, throughout Charles County, King George, of course, and other areas in PG County. It's sort of hard to see, but the green spots on there are where we blanketed people with ads. And part of that was the geofencing ad campaign. And to give you an idea of visits to our website, just in August, of course, was the heaviest traffic. A lot of hits from folks in DC, Southern Maryland, Fredericksburg, Stafford, and of course, King George. The top sources, how people found us, was just generic searches on Facebook, Google. This year, rather than doing Google ads, we did the billboards, but people still found us because a lot of folks who are just looking for something to do will plug in Jazz Festival or Jazz in Virginia, that sort of thing. Other sources were the Visit King George website, the Performer websites, DC Jazz websites, even Bing search. People look for things to do. Now, to give you an idea, all right, there we go. It all comes down to the money. And of course, we're grateful for the county's support, and we used the $22,050 grant to expand our marketing and social media outreach. And so we did a little comparison of last year. We actually spent more this year in marketing. The grant was for, again, $22,050. We actually spent $24,835. Nothing, no prices go down. Every year it gets a little more expensive, especially for radio and print ads. Last year, our second year, the marketing spend was $16,200. Ticket sales were a tiny bit lower this year, number-wise, and we think that is due to the different deals and specials that we offered starting in February when the first tickets went on sale, which was really, really early for us. But we did a Valentine's Day sale where purchasers could buy one ticket at full price, you get the second one half price. We did the same thing for Juneteenth in June. Veterans had a $10 off every ticket that was bought. Sponsor and vendor income last year was $11,300. This year it was almost $14,000. So we are growing, and we just want you to know that we're spending your marketing money wisely. Jazz in the Country is becoming talk of the town. While word of mouth is probably the most popular way because people come one year and then they tell their friends, they tell their family, or they follow the artists, the performers that we have at our festival. And the billboards, all the marketing efforts introduce people to King George. Believe it or not, we've met people right in Fredericksburg that, King George, where is that? It's like, it's just 20 minutes from you. And of course, that means they haven't heard of Mount Bethel Retreat Center, its history, its legacy, or our efforts, our annual jazz festival. So every year, we're proud to report that attendees rave about the music, they rave about our volunteers and staff, and of course, they fall in love with Mount Bethel, being right on the Potomac, a nice sunny summer day. What can be better? The food trucks, we had new ones this year. We had Jamaican food, we had country cooking, we had plant-based food as well. So we tried to give a new variety, something a little healthier, a few healthy options that we had before. And of course, people do not hesitate to tell us who they would like to see perform. Most of those artists that they suggest, names aren't coming to me at the moment, but they're the high ticket ones who some charge 10, 12, and above for performing for an hour. I'm in the wrong business, apparently. We also receive unsolicited requests from jazz artists who want to perform. People love supporting new ventures, and we are glad to entertain and to review their qualifications and all that. So we are growing, and people are talking more and more every year. What's pictured there is the front page article of the Freelance Star. So every year, our core marketing elements really are the performers. It includes the location. We like to educate people about the history of Mount Bethel and King George itself. The benefactors, not only is it the retreat center, but it is King George community, because we want to push to people that this is a new area. Well, it's an area that you just don't drive through. That's what I always thought. King George, I'm on my way somewhere else. But we want to promote it as a destination, and not just for our festival, but throughout the year. So moving forward, we plan to continue networking and engaging local businesses. We believe that we need to reach out for more corporate sponsorships. Most of our sponsors, who we're very, very grateful for, are local small businesses, and they're very, very important. But we want to pull in community business leaders who can give us big dollars so we can bring bigger names as well. And the ultimate goal, of course, is supporting the retreat center so that we can get some renovations going on there. We're talking about hosting an open house to invite some business leaders there who don't know about Mount Bethel, give them a tour of the facility, and we're also in conversation about starting a summer youth camp, talking to actually a local musician team, husband and wife team, who do this sort of thing. And so we're excited, hopefully, to put that in place next year, because we want people to take us seriously. We stick to our vision and our goals, and that is really to serve the youth and promote King George County. The last page, again, talks about it takes a village. And that phrase, as you know, has been popular for several years. And after a while, I'm thinking like, it's sort of trite. But it's actually true. And we want to thank not only the volunteers, we have 30+ volunteers that give their whole day and come help us out. We want to thank King George Tourism and, of course, you, Board of Supervisors, for supporting our marketing efforts. We had more retail and community service vendors this year. And of course, we thank the performers and the attendees. I do want to give a shout out also to the Sheriff's Office, who had staff there providing security, along with a private security company that volunteers every year. We're really grateful for that, as well as the Emergency Services Department, who was there this year and last, I believe. For some reason you can't see, I just had a list of some of our partners and friends. There are many businesses that also give us discounted services, which helps a lot. Our printer, our Recreation News, of course, our videographer who did a great, great job putting together our video. Chick-fil-A provided food for our performers. McDonald's here in King George every year provides breakfast for our volunteers. So we don't want to neglect saying thank you to all those who lend their support. And of course, our biggest thanks goes to you for the marketing spend that you allow us to undertake every year. So for all our team and our board, we say thank you. We will make sure too you get a program so you can peruse at your leisure. So if there are no questions, that is it. Thank you for your help.
Any questions for Ms. Waters? Mr. Collins.
It's a beautiful site. I've attended the festival. It was a wonderful festival. The one thing that the tourism money, I was hoping when you were here asking for the money, I mentioned that the price, the ticket admission is pretty steep. And this year it actually kept me from going. It was like $89, and that I was hoping that the tourism money would knock that back so it'd make it more affordable. So I would hope that you would keep that in mind for the future.
We will take that under, and we actually have conversation about that. And the reason we haven't reduced it thus far, that's a pretty standard price. Sometimes you go to a 1 hour or 2 hour show and you're paid $30, $40, $50. We're giving you all day entertainment. And so we have 5 groups that are performing, and it's actually pretty equitable to what other festivals, whether large or small, charge as well. But we will consider that as well. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair. Thank you. I just want to thank you and your board for coming out this evening and presenting to us. We always like to see data that shows a return on our investment, and you are steadily growing and increasing your reach. And it does take quite a while to establish an annual music festival, yes. But you are definitely putting the work in and showing results. So thanks for everything you're doing. And I think it's neat, particularly in what was in the news this past week, where someone played a crystal flute owned by James Madison before the Library of Congress, as well as did a concert at Capital One Arena. So it's great that you are bringing other flavors, other cultures, other tastes to King George County. Thanks for everything you all are doing.
Thank you.
Ms. Bender?
I want to thank you for your nice presentation. Wish I could have heard some more of the actual music from the festival in the video. That would have been nice. I was waiting, my daughter plays the flute, so I was waiting to hear the flutist play. So anyway, I just want to thank you. You're always enthusiastic about it, and keep up the good work, and hopefully one day you can afford those big name talents.
We're working on that. Thank you so much.
Just like to say thank you for the metrics, and congratulations on the continuing to track upward. And it's encouraging, and hope to see that continue to track upward in regards to the outcomes of these events. So well done.
Thank you.
I get a discount next time.
Definitely. As a matter of fact, we welcome you to come and represent your board and to welcome our attendees.
I'll be there.
And I've already thanked Nick Miner, who comes every year and does that. We would welcome your attendance every year. We'd have a special table for you.
In the back.
Just remember, you cannot bring your own tent.
Joan, I just want to say thank you. You guys did a great job. Pastor Robertson, Randy, you guys, really pull out all the stops for this. And, it's a great event. It keeps growing all the time. I did hear a lot about it. Unfortunately, I could not go. Your beautiful days are busy days for me, and I could not get there. I did get a Miss Scott's CD, which is a great CD. It's actually sitting in my car out there. Mrs. Bender, I will pass it on to you. Yes. It's some fantastic flute music. She does a great job. And, I've just heard it. It was great. And, we, like Mr. Granger said, thank you for bringing all this, the metrics back to us, so we know in the future when, Nick and everybody comes asking for funds, we know exactly where it is. I mean, and everything is laid out. I did see a lot of stuff on the internet and in the brochures, and your digital marketing. I saw it quite a bit anywhere where I was searching. It was around, and the billboards. They were right there. A lot of people drive by billboards; they don't see them. Actually, I had to go look for it and then remind myself to look up to see the billboard. So again, I just wanted to say, thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation. You guys did a great job. Looking forward to next year. Hopefully we'll have nice, good weather like that as well.
Yes, maybe not quite as hot.
It was better this year than it was last year.
It certainly was. There was a little breeze this year.
Yeah, last year was brutal. This year it was a pretty day.
And I would like to point out, we talk about big names and as far as performers, but we strive to feature local talent, and they're just as good as some of these other guys. They just don't have that exposure. So we want to highlight that every year, and glad to do so.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving right along on presentations. Courthouse and Public Safety Radio System, Mr. Lau. Do you have music for us also?
I don't think you want to hear my music. We'll leave that to the experts, and we'll stick to the things we're hopefully pretty good at. Mr. Chair, members of the board, nice to see you as always. Austin there is just going to hand out a presentation that'll also be up on the screen so the board can have a take-home copy. But tonight's presentation is really, we'll call it an update and a recommendation on a path forward with what we had talked about in August with respect to the courthouse and the radio system financing, all as part of the adopted multi-year capital plan as part of your budget from just this spring. So in terms of the background, again, what we're talking about is two specific projects that are in the CIP and are basically in progress right now. Just so happens it's about $12 million for courthouse completion and $12 million for the E911 radio system. So in total, $24 million for those projects. And again, as per your CIP and the multi-year plan that was adopted, this is really just sort of executing on those various projects as built into the budget already. So basically what we've done since that August 23rd meeting is go through a process to evaluate two different tracks, so to speak, called dual track approach. We've done this multiple times in the past. The first track here on page number 2 is what we call direct bank loan, whereby during the month of late August into September, we competitively bid to local, regional, national banking institutions that overall financing package on a competitive basis, and received bids in September and have the results of that and a recommendation for you in terms of going forward. In terms of track 2, which we've been monitoring, is the public credit markets. As you know, we have very good credit ratings. We've accessed those public markets in the past. The last time we did that was for the original courthouse financing in 2020. And what we have today is a much different marketplace than back in 2020. So whereas we sold bonds publicly back in 2020, the kind of relationship there has flipped, and just cutting straight to the chase, we're going to recommend that we do a direct bank loan because A, the favorability of it, I'll walk you through the details, and B, the public markets have been unsettled the last several months. So page number 3, just to give you a little visual in terms of where we are with overall interest rates. Left-hand side, again, shows us a long-term history going back 40 years for tax-exempt borrowing rates. And so historically speaking, if you go back that long, we're still in a very favorable borrowing position. On the right-hand side, though, what we've seen in the last, basically this calendar year, when you really think about it, if it's now October, last 10 months, a very substantial increase in interest rates very, very suddenly. And so we won't go into all the reasons why that's happening. I think it's probably out in the news a fair amount. But it has sort of continued through the summer into the fall. There's no way to know where rates go into the future, but one of our recommendations to you tonight is, again, with this bank loan, being able to lock that rate in so we know what it is, we're not subject to the future fluctuations, whether they be up or down in terms of interest rates. So page number 4 Again, what are our goals? Top there, we want to lock in a competitive interest rate. So the bank loan that we'll talk about was done on a competitive basis. We had a number of different bids. Won't go into all the details in the bids. We still have a little negotiation to do, but we give you a summary of the best bid. But again, part of the rationale and recommendation here is, as we've watched rates continue to rise, let's go ahead and lock it in so we're not exposed to that into the future. Second bullet point there is lock in a fixed interest rate. And so what you'll see in the next couple pages in terms of the proposal is the loan that we're recommending will be a fixed rate for the full term of the loan. It'll be a 20-year final maturity, fixed interest rate for that full time period. So again, we'll know with certainty what that interest rate is for the entire term of the loan. Third bullet point, prepayment flexibility. Again, a 20-year loan. Who knows where rates will be in the future, but we always like to maintain some level of flexibility in terms of the ability to refinance the loan in the future, to pay off early, et cetera, et cetera. And so we'll have that ability. Fourth bullet point gets a little bit into the nuances, but these, it's really going to be two loans is what it'll be. One for the radio system, one for the courthouse. The way they'll be structured, they're going to be called something a little bit different, but the same general, the county is sort of the credit behind it all. But as part of doing that, what we wanted to try to minimize was the need to kind of pledge county assets as collateral, no different than if you have a home mortgage. The bank will lend you the dollars, but they want to lien on that house. Similar concept in this type of structure. And so what we think we've worked out with the bank, we still have a couple details to iron out, is a scenario where we're going to be able to minimize what we have to pledge in terms of collateral for the courthouse and for the radio system. So on page number 5, just to give you a sense, 3 different bids from banking institutions at the top of the page there: Huntington Bank, Capital One, and Webster Bank. All of those fairly large national players. Again, it's been a very, we'll call it interesting year thus far in terms of interest rates. The loan here is on the relatively larger side for a bank loan, but with our credit ratings, meaning the county's credit ratings, all 3 of these institutions willing to provide fixed rates for the full term of the loan. Webster Bank provided the lowest interest rates of any of those. You can see the table there, kind of middle of the page in terms of what that looks like. The courthouse will be done over a 20-year time period. Again, that's a brand new building. It's going to last, in essence, generations. And so that is a 20-year financing fixed interest rate at a 3.87. The radio system, a little bit shorter useful life, done over a 15-year time period, so that's a lower rate just by a bit, a 3.59. The interest rate on that, again, fixed for the full term of the loan. So you take your eye to the far right-hand side, we'll call it the blended average of those 2 is about a 3.75 in terms of the interest rate. Given the overall market environment right now, so as we think about a comparison to the public markets are probably in the low to maybe even mid 4% range. So part of the rationale here is relatively simple in that sense. We think a bank loan, because we know what that rate is today, and it's lower than a public sale, go ahead and lock that in, and again, be able to take advantage of that, not be subject to kind of the whims of the market going forward. If you go back and look in the springtime, we had used a 4.5% interest rate, and we set up the budget and all the planning, so that 3.75 blended average is about 75 basis points lower than all the planning we did this spring. So that'll save fairly substantial dollars relative to the budget planning that was done this past spring. So a couple of details in terms of Webster Bank. Again, lowest interest rate of any of the proposals that we received. The prepayment flexibility we're highlighting here in the middle of the slide. And what that really looks like is the courthouse, years 1 to 5 would be what's called a no-call. And it's highly unlikely during the first 5 years of a 20-year loan you're going to want to refinance it or pay it off. 6 to 8, a modest 1% penalty, and then year 9 and thereafter, you can pay it off, refinance it with no penalty. Similar situation for the radio, because it's a little bit shorter loan, those windows in terms of the modest penalty year 5 and 6, and thereafter no penalty, that comes a little bit quicker because it's a shorter loan. So in either situation, we have a fixed rate, it's below the planning estimates, very much on the market right now, competitively in terms of the interest rates. And we know with some nuances that I'll explain what those rates are as we're talking right now, not subject to the whims of the market. Page 7 just gives you a little bit of a visual and some numbers in terms of when we take the existing county debt service, layer these two projects on top of it. You can see the dark green is our existing debt service, tails off a little bit over the next several years, and then a fairly steep decline out in 2033 and 34. The light green there is the radio, and the light blue is the courthouse. So all those purposely layered in over a couple years and all tying back to, again, the planning that was done with respect to the budget and the CIP this spring. So no surprises there. And in fact, the payments are lower than what was planned this spring. So in terms of recommendation and rationale, again, moving forward with this Webster Bank proposal, lowest bank rate, prepayment we've talked about, an ability to lock that rate in, we think are all very, very important in terms of what we're trying to do. So tonight what we really have for you is, we'll call it informational. We have a variety of details that we need to work through with the bank. Mostly we think on the documentation side, in terms of some of the legal documents with Jesse Bausch, with Sands Anderson's here over my right-hand shoulder. And so the plan would be, after any questions that you have, and if you so desire to move forward, we could kind of have the, call it the concurrence of the board to keep moving. We bring everything back to you at your next board meeting for the formal approvals with the resolutions, et cetera, et cetera. So we aren't sort of across the finish line with the bank in terms of all their credit approvals and making sure all the details are ironed out. We don't have any reason to expect we're going to have any problems. But again, we want to have that ability to get it all ironed out, get over the finish line, and bring it back to you on the 18th for the final approval. So page 9 just kind of lays that out in terms of next steps. Again, here this evening with the board's kind of concurrence and green light, we'll continue that process to make sure we can bring back to you what we expect will be the same financing package, same interest rates, just for final approval with the various resolutions. On the 18th, the one other logistical item we're working with staff on is we'll need an EDA meeting, as the EDA will be a conduit issuer for this, which is something they've done in the past and did on the courthouse. They have no financial obligation, just kind of the way the rules and the laws work in Virginia. With all that said, we would be in a position to close basically by Halloween, end of the month of October, have those funds in hand for both the radio and the courthouse. And so with that, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions, board? Mr. Collins.
So you mentioned the collateral. What was the collateral be used?
So the way the courthouse will be structured is it'll be sort of what's called additional bonds, but it'll basically be kind of appended to the original 2020 financing for the courthouse. And so that 2020 financing used the land and courthouse that is to be built for collateral, and this financing will basically be added to it. We've got a couple of details there to iron out, but we think that's the way that should work out. On the radio system then, the system itself will serve as the collateral for the loan, which is pretty typical in terms of the equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So the goal is, and we're not entirely with the finish line yet, but The goal is to not necessarily have to add in any other facilities, et cetera, for the collateral purposes.
So right now, the only collateral will be the new courthouse.
New courthouse for the courthouse portion of this, and the radio system will be collateral for the collateral for the, correct.
Okay.
Anyone else? I had one. How do you, the process of getting the proposals out to the banks? I mean, is there a website like the state puts out or the county puts out for like RFPs and things, or is that something physically that you all have to go out and send proposals to?
We physically go out and do that, and we have a list of, I think it's probably about 75 different banks, and so A, we kind of know the marketplace in general, and B, we'll canvass any of the local banks, bank branches, et cetera, to make sure they're aware of it. And so it's a pretty broad spectrum in terms of who sees that, but it is something we do.
Right, yeah, that was another question, was you did hit our local banks and everything. And
correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, if nothing else, I guess we just need consensus of the board to continue moving forward.
One more question. Sure.
Collins?
So the non-research personnel for Davenport that does the request for the proposals, how is that structured within your organization where it wouldn't be conflict for that?
Not sure I entirely understand your question, Mr. Collins, but that's something we do, meaning as your advisor, and as your advisor, we aren't making a loan, we can't make a loan, we don't make a loan, and so in that sense, we're sitting on the same side of the table as you.
Right. So you don't receive any credits or other thing?
No, sir. No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess consensus to keep moving forward, board? Yes, Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No, I don't vote, but do you need a motion to proceed so that for the purposes of to approve the bid and then subject to further ratification at a future meeting? Okay.
So
we'd need a motion.
Second.
Has it been brought before our legal folks?
So
I wouldn't do a motion until the contract itself was brought before.
So Sands Anderson is your bond counsel, if you will. They're the legal folks that do this review of the financial packages of this nature. I know that Kelly has been involved in looking at some of this as well, but it would be we would rely on our bond counsel in this respect.
So consensus was fine. I mean, you give her an opportunity just to, when you all make the final.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Collins, it's a good point, and that's the whole purpose, I think, of having it subject to, review and concurrence of Mrs. Lackey, and making sure that with Jesse, we can kind of iron out all the final details. So I think in essence, and Jesse, you can correct me if I'm wrong, nothing you're doing is binding right now. We're still going to come back to you with the final details before any formal resolution is adopted. So Jesse, you want to add context to that?
Sure. So we'll be coming back, and that we'll have forms of documents, and we'll be sharing them with staff and with county attorney at that next meeting. I mean, and that will be really where the approval of the actual deal is done. This is, like I said, if we can't get to that meeting and get approved there, the bank is not going to come back to us with a signed commitment and say you're obligated to do anything. They understand that second part is really what obligates the county. This is really an approval that would just let them do what they need on their credit side to get approved so that we can close.
And I think what I was asking for is kind of like what Kyle had said, is approval of the package is presented by Davenport, and then it would then come back at a formal vote on the resolution and all the other documentation that will be a part of this. But I think that I would imagine in terms of your negotiations, discussions with the bank would like to know, are they the ones that are going to be going to work on all this? So that this is the one that you guys want to use. That's, I think, what we're looking at.
Answer your question, Mr. Collins?
Had a consensus. I thought that was good enough. I didn't think we really needed a motion until later part of October, so everything gets ironed out. There's consensus to move forward with that particular institution.
I don't know if Ms. Lackey wants to weigh in, if she's still listening.
Sure, if I may. Jesse had prepared a potential resolution, but as it was not included in your agenda package, I didn't feel that we could adopt a resolution tonight, but you can proceed either way, proceed with consensus for them to proceed as presented, or you could formalize it by motion for them to proceed with the drafting of a resolution for consideration at a future agenda date.
Mr. Chair, we got a motion and properly seconded.
All right, we have motion properly seconded, and do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
We will, we'll see you in, I think, 2 weeks. If there's any updates in advance of that, we'll make sure to communicate that through Mr. Miller, but we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you, Kyle. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming out. Okay, moving along, we have getting into action items. Department of Finance request ARPA funds for redundant cellular internet service.
That's going to actually be Mr. Dines.
Mr. Dines.
This is a IT item, so he's looking forward to making his presentations.
I had Mrs. Hahn written down, but go ahead, Mr. Dines. And
yes, Mr. Chairman, I will be presenting on behalf of our esteemed Department of Finance Director. The subject, as you stated, was for our Cradle Point Redundant LTE Cell Phone Internet Service Project for key departments and offices in the county and also the Sheriff's Office Mobile Command Bus. So this all started back in 2019 with our redundancy plan, and this board was able to allow us through CIP funds to take part in this plan to make sure we had coverage for the many internet issues that we might have in emergency situations especially. So we would like to have the additional sources of the internet for the essential personnel task of fire rescue emergency services, the Sheriff's Office, circuit and combined courts, and our county administration building. This project will consist of duplicating critical network components through this extra form of fail-safe devices in the form of LTE telecommunications routers connected to each site's network firewall. For resiliency, the use of the redundant components in the form of 2 different modem modules with SIM cards from 2 different providers, Verizon and AT&T, makes achieving our goal of having multiple carriers in one device. We all know what sometimes happens with our Verizon connections. Lastly, the wide area network diversity is also made available by having the 2 independent internet connections that are routed to 2 separate carriers and automatically pushed to the other carrier in case the service of one carrier goes down. Included in this project is managed service for 1 year for all of our Cradle Point devices that we currently have, as well as these new ones, and we'll take advantage of having the software upgrades through the cloud for maintenance. We like to plan on making sure each important job task, such as 911 CAD systems, Motorola radio systems, vSIN live scan access, body-worn camera recordings, email file access, EMS reporting, firehouse vehicle maintenance reporting, VoIP phone systems, land records, Supreme Court applications, case files, evidence, voter registration record, access, treasurer credit card online payments, DMV searches, Commissioner of Revenue, personal property, real estate assessments, taxes, building inspections, permits, GIS, financial system access for payroll, accounts payable, and check printing. Those are just many of the things that we will use through county workflows so our departments will be able to engage in every day in case we have to use this backup service. And so we ask for you to authorize our county administrator to transfer $21,039.69 from the American Rescue Plan projects line to a GL line to be created for the Cradle Point Redundant LTE Cell Internet Service. And upon approval, Finance will create a GL expenditure code for this project. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Dines?
Yes, sir. Is there any reoccurring expenses?
The only one would be the service, the cloud service through our Cradle Point connections. And with these additional ones, I believe it would be from $3,500 about a year. It would probably go up to almost $5,000 because this is 4 additional ones.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have questions?
If I could add just something to what Mr. Dines presented. This was something that we talked about with the, following our EOC meeting, is that was something that was identified as that, we really are kind of standing out there. If something goes down, there isn't that redundancy that's so critical for the emergency fire and rescue and the sheriff's department, and then also linking to all the other buildings. So that's where it came up. I mean, we certainly would have, I think that we could have talked about it, I guess, in the development of our ARPA funding back in the summer, but it just wasn't something that was identified as a critical need. And I think obviously with what has been going on in Florida, I think you can see that how important any kind of redundancy and backup in communications is, and your IT is so essential. So.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. That's exactly right.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Do we have a motion?
Just one more. So that reoccurring expenses will be in your budget?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll do something I normally don't do. I authorize the county administrator to transfer $21,039.69 from the ARP projects line to a GL line to be created for the Cradle Point Redundant LTE Cell Internet Service.
Second.
All right, we have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dines. And then you are up again.
Yes, I believe you might read from your bench for the authority.
Okay. We have a resolution of the King George County Board of Supervisors supporting National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Whereas internet-based devices are present in every aspect of life for many people in our community with constant connections, providing opportunities for innovation and modernization. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic forced daily aspects of societal life to online environments that are vulnerable to cyber attacks, and whereas a connected society is subject to cybersecurity threats that can compromise even the most personal and sensitive of information, and whereas connected critical infrastructure is subject to cybersecurity threats that can compromise fundamental economic health and safety functions, and whereas National Cybersecurity Awareness Month is a collaborative effort between government and industry to raise awareness about the importance of cybersecurity, and Whereas in 2022, National Cybersecurity Awareness Month will emphasize see yourself in cyber, demonstrating that while cybersecurity may seem like a complex subject, ultimately it is really all about people providing information and resources to help educate the public and ensure that all individuals and organizations make smart decisions, whether on the job, at home, or in school, now and in the future. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the King George County Board of Supervisors supports the goals and ideas of National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and be it further resolved that October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month in King George County.
Mr. Chair, I'll move adoption of the resolution as presented.
All right, we have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Dines.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of slides. I just want to show you where we are in our county with the direction of Mr. Miller and our new HR director. We're ready to roll out our campaign. Of course, this month is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and our motto is we're all in. That means we want 100% participation from our workers, everyone that uses our systems in the county. We're going to use Know Before for our training campaigns and our training. We have online classes, and we've already had one initial baseline training that was in mid-September. First online training classes started yesterday, and so most of our people are starting to do that already. We also encourage you all to do the classes too. I help you out a lot, even besides your work computers, with your home computers, so you know what to look for. See, the Know Before is know what to do before something bad happens by learning what to do. So that's why it's kind of a catchy name for that company. And they're pretty popular throughout the whole state. We have a second baseline training campaign that's going to be in mid-October, and that'll be a little tougher. So what I mean by the campaign is things are sent to each person's email, and then it tries to take your actions and try to help you to not do the wrong thing, do the right thing, and be ready and armed in the future. So the results from those campaigns will form the future classes we've already set up with the company through their portal, how we want to do that, and different kinds of things you have to look for. Then the second online trainings will begin in November 1st, and those will be a little tougher, hopefully. But there will be pick-me-ups. If you stumble through anything, it will try to build your resolve so that you can be ready for the things that come up later. Like I said, it'll escalate in difficulty. So under that first campaign, it's kind of small, you can't see, but we had a few people that clicked on some things. But overall, the score was 34.6%. You see that's in the yellow, which is not bad, but you want to keep it away. We want to get it to green. We want it to be low. So we're going to try to work on this training, and hopefully these statistics right here, I could show you at a later date, will be so much lower. But it wasn't bad for the first time. It's not bad at all. So what we've done as our IT team is we've had a tabletop exercise to gauge our incident response for our staff, and we've developed the roles and responsibilities for each one of us. There's 4 of us in our group, as you know. So it's a lot to do, but it's very important. So right now, we're in the process of updating our plan. Our cybersecurity plan is essential for our county. And I had one way back when I first started, and I had always made changes to it, but you know how things have gone exponentially out of control with these bad actors on the internet. So we want to make sure that we're compliant. So there's many things you have to go through to get there. So you have to have documented a risk assessment, a business assessment, what will happen just in case something does hit like the sheriff's office. You have to have a total, complete plan, but be ready for it because you've evaluated all the potential disasters. So of course we have a network systems assessment, and that's held together by as many firewalls and securities and scannings for malware, antivirus type things. Then you have your policies and procedures, what to do. If something happened, you have to have a place where someone might be new to our team that might need to look at the book and follow all of the things you have to do, because we have new guidelines in the state with the Fusion Center and VITA. So as you see, that is tied into the reporting of the incidents. You have to do that 24 hours after something happens. So you might be trying to remediate what's going on, but you still have to let the Fusion Center and VITA know because they don't want it to spread throughout the whole state. Then, of course, we have our network system security controls, and that's 1,000 lines of questions that you have to have a positive answer for, that you have detailed on what to do, what to look for. And most thing we want to do for each of our users is to have 100% participation and completion, and hopefully 100% correct and passing grades for our training. Hopefully Mr. Miller will back us with that. He says he will do that for us. So we look forward to that. So are there any questions?
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question? So, Mr. Dines, this testing that you did last month, was this all those emails that I kept getting that was trying to tempt me to click on something, and every time I would report spam or report phishing and I would try to block it, it said you can't block something sent to you from your own organization?
I cannot confirm or deny.
Thank you, Mr. Dines, for all you're doing.
And so also in the future, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead and finish, Mr. Dines.
In the future, we might want to tie into some of these grants that are coming out. That we already have, we use our Assure. You all have allowed us to have that outside firm help us with all of this process, because it's a lot to not have one person on staff that can only do information security officer type duties. But the CISA and FEMA are managing this grant project that will be given like $185 million to local governments, rural areas, territories across the United States. And it's to help against the threats to information systems. And Homeland Security is kind of at the top of all of that. And they will allow you to try to get grants in order to improve your security of critical infrastructure, the resilience of the services. That's kind of like what we're doing with our LTE project. Cyber governance and planning, which we're doing with our Assura people, our consultants, mitigating priorities. And I don't know what we're going to be doing about cybersecurity workforce, but we are talking with our IT directors in the group, Valguide in Virginia, that maybe the state could give a grant to pay for part of a salary, because a salary for an information security officer is very exorbitant. So if they were willing to give money towards that, then you could combine with each locality, and then you could have that person on staff full time that only did that part of their job as cybersecurity. So it's just things we're going to try to reach for. The VITA is in charge of that for the most part for submission, And so they're supposed to come out with more guidelines and what we'll have to do to submit. So we look forward to that. Hopefully we can have some money put towards that project.
Any other questions for Mr. Dines? Thank you and your staff for everything y'all do.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Does anybody need a short 5-minute break before we get into discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. So we will be in recess here for 5 minutes. Okay, I will call the King George County Board of Supervisors meeting back in session. And we are moving into a discussion item that we have on the agenda tonight, which is green energy venture request for a text amendment. Mr. Granger.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for adding this to the agenda I'd asked, and so I appreciate you adding it. I did have the opportunity to meet with Green Energy Ventures a couple weeks ago just to discuss their proposal, and they reiterated the need for a text amendment to even move forward with the ability to do the project, because currently our zoning ordinance is silent upon the type of development in hydrogen energy production in particular that they're looking to do. So I figured at the very least, we can at least have a discussion and make a decision one way or the other, just so they know. Either they can move forward, or it might take some time, or this board is just not interested, and it's not the right place for this type of project. So it's really just a courtesy so that they can be aware and make their plans properly. So I know Ms. Lackey had sent forward an email to the board with a handful of different proposed directions, which could, I believe they were, I'll just read them off. We have the option to direct staff to bring forward a draft text amendment to submit to the Planning Commission and board to amend the zoning ordinance for the permitted use of the power plant, either by right in the industrial district or by special exception. That's one option. Second one would be to direct staff to notify the Berkeley Group to do a study and provide feedback on a text amendment to be submitted to the Planning Commission for a recommendation to the board after public hearing. And the third option is to direct staff to notify the Berkeley Group to include power plant as a permitted use, either by right or by special exception in the draft ordinance revisions anticipated by the mid-2023 timeframe. And I'll be honest, I think there's a fourth one as well. At the end of the day, obviously, it's the board's, it's a Dillon rule state. So if the code is silent upon a particular activity in a zone, then that activity is not allowed. So if the board is not even interested in entertaining this kind of activity, the fourth option in my mind would be to say we're not going to move forward. We're not even going to ask the Berkeley Group to entertain it, in which case it's just not going to happen. So I'm asking you guys for your input. I will go ahead and give my personal feelings on it first, so you guys can kind of digest it first. I think Mr. and Ms. Fairfax had brought up some good points in regards to the idea about just moving forward with the text amendment. We are in the process of going through all of our zoning ordinances for revision. This is certainly something I don't think we've ever, I'm not aware that we've ever looked at hydrogen energy production in order to craft a good ordinance. I think it would take some time. I would want Berkeley Group to be involved in that crafting of it. And I'll be honest, I'm just not interested in taking on saying, let's do this in a quick, not necessarily even a quick rush, but I'm not interested in trying to short ship this ahead of the current rezoning overhaul personally. I think I would be willing to consider it as part of that rezoning overhaul and have the Planning Commission and the Berkeley Group look at it and entertain it and provide a recommendation based off citizen feedback on through that whole process. So that would be my personal take on the best way to move forward. But I'll leave it to my colleagues as well, because obviously I don't have authority to make that decision. Just my personal take.
Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Chair, may I?
Ms. Kupka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I agree with Supervisor Granger. I stated in my board report this evening that obviously Virginia has a new energy plan that we should keep our options open. So I'd be willing to direct staff to notify the Berkeley Group to look at it, include it as a permitted use either by right or by special exception in the draft ordinance during the course of the overhaul. And I just want to make folks aware that I personally have had two other groups. One is a neighborhood that came to me with regard to a complaint about vehicles parked, multiple vehicles on one residential lot, parked, kind of looks like a junkyard, but our ordinance, if they're covered, our ordinance allows for that right now. So we said we weren't going to circumvent or shortchange the process, and we weren't going to send a bunch of individual stuff to the Planning Commission for special treatment during this process. We were going to let them do their work, and I think that's important to let them do their work. So what I did with that group was I said, go to the workshop, give public comment to the Planning Commission, see if they consider it. I was contacted by another group, I think Mr. Stonehill was as well, that wants to do a micro winery, and we currently don't allow that here. And so I encourage them to go to the workshop too and give public comment rather than try to force things to be decided immediately at the Planning Commission level. So I agree with your recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Bender.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I agree with Supervisor Granger's recommendation, especially through the process I was doing at the state level. It's very vital, and our Planning Commission has worked very hard and had numerous work sessions, and they should be allowed to finish their process, and it needs to be done right, so it needs to take care. Public has to have their input in it, and I think we need to go the path that Supervisor Granger suggested. Thank you.
Mr. Collins.
Well, when we talk about rezoning into industrial, I think that the choices are by right or by special exemption. And in order to control what this county wants, the citizens want, I think that it needs to be special exemption. 5 months ago, I didn't know what hydrogen energy was. And so it's been a big learning curve to try to figure out what hydrogen energy is. I can't say that I'm for or against it because I don't have enough information. It sounds good, but I think we need to go through some processes to make sure that things are locked down tight, where we make sure that we, just like the other one that came in front of us not too long ago, wasn't a specific project. I think we need to pay attention to what folks are saying. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. I think we need projects like this here in King George. I mean, we've all spoke about that in the past about, ways to keep our taxes down and to bring in some industry. Is it the S word? Is it, data? Is it hydrogen? Is it, who knows what it will be? But we certainly need these projects to come to King George to help the burden of taxes on our citizens. But with that being said, it's got to be done correctly. None of us up here are experts by far. We are paying the Berkeley Group. They are our hired experts for rezoning. And the second step from there is the Planning Commission. They probably have a lot more experience in that stuff. I most certainly by me, those guys certainly do a huge job for us. And I take what they have to say really to heart. But saying we definitely need to have the Berkeley Group continue their study and put, add these things either by right or special exemption to do this. Like I said, I think we would be shortchanging the entire county if we moved ahead and said, sure, let's just add a text, amendment in there right now. So for me, I say we go ahead and have Berkeley continue doing their work, and they can look into it and do their studies and put it into the our new draft or our new ordinances.
Just one more for discussion on the same thing with what you just, there's no doubt that we need some more money in our tax coffers. And I think that we've all been looking at that. We're looking for the projects that will be best for us. I'm not saying that this project wouldn't be best for us, but we need to stay away from by right in industrial. We need to do special exemption, each project on its own merit. Instead of saying a text amendment for power plants, who knows what you'll get. So the Fairfax were speaking about that earlier. you should really do special exemption on any of these rezonings for industrial, so you get what you want and not what you don't want. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
In that case, what I heard at least, could we direct staff to notify the Berkeley Group and then Planning Commission to consider adding this to the draft ordinance revisions for the overhaul?
Kind of what I heard as well.
Okay.
So
codified it for Mr.
Is it a suggestion to add it to that, the Berkeley Group, for them to come up with a by right or special exemption for that? Can you direct
Excuse
them?
me. Or are you asking that the Berkeley Group consider it as part of the zoning process, either creating a zone or doing it, which would be the other way of handling it as well? As Mr. Collins said, you're just asking the Berkeley Group to add it to what they're doing currently right now. That's how I'm taking it.
Yeah, yes, to consider it and provide a recommendation. I would probably say by special exception, but I would say as well that obviously they are the experts and there's a reason they're the experts. So I would like to hear what they'd have to say before just flat out directing them.
Okay. Mrs. Bender?
There's one thing I was going to add, because it will be in my suggestions that I was going to give from the HB meeting, is to one of the things, especially in Southwest Virginia, they've done is they have map overlays where you would allow the industrial area, where you would allow solar. So that might be one thing that where would you allow if there was power plant or solar or whatever, that battery storage, that might be considered adding that map overlays, especially to the comp plan.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And Mr. Collins?
I was just curious of that particular project that was the Green Energy Ventures. Would they be interested in putting another, as they call it, straw in the river? Or
This is just a discussion. They would have to have a conversation with them. You want to know that? Not a question and answer session with them right now.
Anything else, Mr. Collins? No? Okay.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Miller, I guess we'll just contact Berkeley and tell them to move forward and add this into their zoning overall.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Next up is County Administrator Report. Mr. Miller?
All right. Excuse me. So you get the benefit of a losing of the voice, so I will be very quick. And that looks like a lot, so I'm not going to get into it. But before he slips out, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Hunziker for his help and he stole my thunder because I had this on there. And I think you guys have copies of the notification. And so the next step will be that we'll start working in our planning department with the folks at DCR and for community flood preparedness for our overall plan. So we'll obviously be bringing some updates to you as we go along. EOC meeting recap, not going to get into any of that. I think what we'll do is we'll reserve that for another board meeting, perhaps, to let Mr. Lind, Deputy Chief Lynn, and Chief Moody come and talk, and Sheriff Giles, and they can talk about just some of the things that we took away. Chairman Stonehill was right. It was a good meeting. Got everybody in there. Identified some things that we know we need to get better at, and we obviously we're very fortunate we're not the people that were dealing with the brunt of Hurricane Ian, but obviously we did experience some of that, continued today, in fact, and overnight. Making a difference award. So two things on that. First of all, we are in conversations with the people who put together the plaques and all that to add Dr. Young's wife, Stephanie, I believe it's to the 2020 plaque that would say that recognize her as a citizen award winner for the Making It a Difference award. But you also note that we've got kind of an overview and what Derek Messler, our HR director, is just wanting to kick that into your laps and let you guys just put it on your radar screen. That's coming out. It's usually around this time of the year or early November, and so we'll get to work on that. I will be distributing a public information officer position description to all of you. We've sent it to all the department heads for their input, and I'll go beyond just looking at the job description because the job descriptions are pretty. They're pretty bland. So what would be more important is envisioning what the plan is. And I really do want this to be a position that, would obviously be under my oversight, but it is a position that is going to serve you and will be there for you to assist if you have information needs, you want to get out to your individual districts, how you want to, communicate. This is not meant to be an exclusive position of the county administrators. It's meant to be an overall resource for the county in general. We obviously have public information officers or a function in the sheriff's department. Fire and rescue do a good job. Parks and recreation. This will tie a lot of that all together, complement it, and that's what this is all about. CPMT nomination, Miss Kathy Bird. I would need a motion as an alternate representative.
I move to appoint Kathy Bird to the King George CPMT as the alternate representative for the King George County Schools.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
That is it.
All right. That was the quickest one yet, Mr. Miller. Thank you.
I try.
With the bad boys. All right. So I guess we're all done and we have a motion.
Move to adjourn until tomorrow, Wednesday, October 5th at 6 p.m. in the boardroom.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Nay.
Or I'm sorry. Anyone voting nay?
Nay.
Okay. Chair votes aye. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.